Okay, this is the third tutorial in the music app. And so far we've built a canvas with a raw image background to make a nice two-dimensional panel. We've set up our project, whether it's WebGL, iOS or Android. We've arrived at a screen size. You could be working with a phone portrait or whatever. And we've got a bunch of assets here. And I haven't really spoken much about what all of this is because I guess if you go into your wherever your folder is, where you have your Unity projects, and you have a look at the architecture of this project, you'll see it's it's quite complicated compared to what we were doing in Max. And Unity is very organized, and what we're doing is actually using a very intuitive graphical kind of programming environment to make like a really hardcore computer program in C++ or some other kind of compiled format, another language or whatever. And we're creating a program over time. We're creating a directory tree and a narrative in data. And Unity keeps all of that really tightly controlled under lock and key. And just so that you know, if you change the names of any of those things, you can really disturb that balance. You might, at the very least, break your project, and you'll never be able to open it again. So one thing that's a good idea is to grab your entire project folder from time to time and duplicate it. Sorry, not duplicate it. Compress it into a zip format, and then name the zip format, and keep your backups that way. But you can see here that this project folder up here, it basically just shows the assets and another folder called packages, which is here. And these are actual physical folders on your computer. And if we go to the assets thing, we can click in here and you can see all of the audio files that I've got there. And you can see the graphics files and things like that. And Unity, what it does is it searches these folders. There's different ways that you can put material in them. You can click and drag it into here. But what I like to do is what Unity's kind of always made me do for years now. I like to click and drag it into here, into this little window, or directly onto that folder. And then the program, knows exactly where they are, and it creates all the right directory tree structure for it to find files. So let's get on today. I want to create some other audio sources to start with. So let's create a fresh one actually. And drag it into your audio objects. And I'm going to call this Tycho loop. And I'm going to give it an audio source name. And I'm going to go to my audio folder here, and I'm going to grab one of these loops and put it in here. And I'm calling it a loop because you can see the little orange waveform editor here shows that there's action happening right across it, and there's patterns in it, repeating patterns. And this is an example of a 4-bar loop. And I'm going to click it on play on awake, and I'm going to click it on loop. And then I'm going to press play. And as soon as I go into play mode, as soon as my app is loaded or whatever, that loop is going to play. And it's repeating. So you get the idea. And now what I want to do is I want to control that. I want to control the volume of it somehow. So if we go to game object, to user interface, Unity gives us a built-in slider object. And it's very clever, Unity. I didn't have to tell it where to put this, but it did infer then, it did guess that it was going to go alongside the rest of my objects nested in this main panel. So as you can see, it's tiny, teeny tiny. And I could set up its width and its height, but I would have to work out how to scale those numbers. What I'm going to do is just use the scaler tool down here, and I'm going to say, let's scale that up 4 times, X and Y. And let's have it go up and down as well. At the moment, its direction is left to right, but if I click in here and I go bottom to top, and pick it up with the handle tool and move it up here. And I might want to grab my other taiko drums now and move them both down. I haven't even started to line those up perfectly yet, but there's grids and things here that I can use. So you can see here I've got a slider, and there's a little arrow here. I can click there and I can see that there's a few different things. There's a background in the slider, which I could make black. There's a foreground in the slider, which I could make like a deep burgundy red. And there's a handle on the slider, which has a source image, which at the moment it's just given a generic Unity one called knob, which is built into Unity. If I go to my sprite folder, I can give it this taiko drum one, and I can scale that up as well. Maybe not that big. And there I've got a nice little fader. And if I press play, you can see in the play window here, I can move this up and down. And on your computer, you should still be getting music coming through as well. I've just turned my sound down. So if we go to the slider now, on the main level of the slider, first of all, I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to go down to where this interaction window is again. And just like the button, I'm going to click in here and then grab the audio source called Tycho Loop 1 and drag it down into there. Now, if you've made a mistake here, which is very easy to do, you might have dragged down one of these other audio sources, in which case the slider will control the volume of one of these drums. So if you've done that and nothing happens when you move this up and down and it doesn't control the volume of that audio source, check to see if one of your drums has dropped out or is controllable by that slider, and then you'll know you're bad. So there's a slider and there's an audio source with the same name. And I've put the name in front of the audio source and the object in front of the name for the main panel things, just so I don't get confused, just to help kind of separate audio sources from buttons. Once again, I've got to go back to assign the function to the audio source here, and what I'm looking for is a parameter called volume, and it's right up the top. And you can see here its starting value can be set as well. And as I move that, you'll see on the play window the slider moving. Now you'll notice that when we started the app, there was a starting value that was set here, and we need that to be set to 0. And you might begin by looking for it in here, but it's not actually in there. It's just that if we start the value of our slider at 0, we should also start our audio source volume at 0. So computers are just going to do exactly what we tell them to do. So I have to tell it to not make any sound when it starts, and then the slider can take over. And if I want that slider to start when you open the app halfway or whatever, I'm going to have to set that here as well. Let's play it again. So that's pretty cool. And why do we do play on awake anyway? Why not just have, when you move the slider, the sound plays? Well, I'll tell you why. If we have all of these things playing on awake, then if I have them all cut to exactly the same length and they're in the same tempo, all of these audio files, then I can set up multiple files. I can grab one slider, I can duplicate it, I can duplicate that again, and I can call this one slider 2, Tycho loop 2, Tycho loop 3, and then I can duplicate these out as well. And rename them. And I can put a bunch of different sounds in these. So I've got different Tycho loops down here, so I'll put that one in there. Sorry, maybe I should have put Tycho 2 in there. Tycho 3. So I've got my audio sources ready to go. Now I've just got to make sure these are tied to the correct ones. And I'm back on the slider now, and if I grab it, I can move this one off. And if I click on the next one, I can move that off. I'll worry about how to line them up later. And here, this slider has to be tied to this audio source. And clicking on and selecting this one in blue, I can then move my mouse off, and I can click and drag Tycho loop 3 down there. And I will have to reset the functions audio source to volume. And audio source volume. Now, because I duplicated that audio source that I'd made, these other ones will have all the same settings in them. So they should have a 0 start, they should be play on awake, and they should be loop. But if I grab new ones from the menu each time, I would have to set that up again. And as you can hear now, I've got multiple loops, all in sync and all running together, and just looping endlessly. And you might think, well, you know, is that really that interesting? Well, this is just 3 sliders, and it's just, you know, I think maybe an 8-bar loop. And imagine if you had 12 sliders laid out, then you could create an epic music mix that maybe goes for half an hour. And if you had music loops that were longer, again, like say a minute or 2 longer, or you had some really interesting ambient tracks as well, nature sounds or underwater sounds or whatever, then you can extend this performance of music for maybe hours just for a short amount of material with some extra play-along functionality. And you can use the same approach here to really mix in any style of music to make a keyboard. You could design sprites in the shapes of instrument strings, percussion, drum kit kind of instruments. There's really no limit. If I go back to the button here, you can see that there's a little bit of shading that happens when I hit the key. You can see that that's this pressed color over here. So if I wanted to make that red when I hit the key, I could just change the shading there. And because I've done that in play mode, it won't save when I press stop. And this is a really cool feature of Unity. In the beginning, it might seem like a curse, but down the track, you use play mode for playtesting, and you push the parameters and change the way that the things work, and learn how to do things. And then you switch out of play mode and then kind of put them into the components through the inspector. So this week, for the next few days, get busy and design some graphics and put them into this. And if you've got some music loops or you know how to do that as well, I'll be going through that and looking at some tutorials of how to do that as well this week. But there's a really basic introduction to Unity, and I'll be putting out a couple more videos towards the end of the week. But what I suggest you do first is get a bunch of buttons, get a bunch of sliders up, and play on awake, volume to 0. Just get your music app underway, and then we'll build off that over the next coming weeks. Thank you.